everybody. Welcome to another exciting episode of Coco and Daltz. We're real people bringing you real reviews of all the latest movies and series on Netflix, Amazon Prime, and Disney+. And today, before we get into what we're doing today, I'm not Daltz.
Hey, I thought you forgot that part. I'm not Coco. I'm still here.
And today, now we can get into this part.
Yes.
We're reviewing American Murder, The Family Next Door on Netflix, a recent release. Daltz, tell us what it's all about.
Not to be confused with American Crime Story, The Murder Next Door, or American Family, The Crime Story Next Door.
Before we started recording, I was like, what the hell is the name of this thing? I guess I better figure that out. And Daltz was like, American Crime Story. I was like, I know that's not it.
No, I was way off, listener. I was just kind of winging it, without the notes.
This is the attention to detail that has made us famous.
This is where we are in the pandemic. It's like, what are we talking about? I don't know. What did we watch last? Okay, let's do a Geico commercial.
Some chick died. The end.
Wow.
Yeah.
So the story is, not to make light of murder, but It's about murder. And it's about this story of a mom and her two children, and they go missing in Frederick, Colorado. And this is in 2018. And the documentary it's a Netflix documentary, debuted September 30th, which is a week ago as we're recording this. It recreates the story in a fascinating way. It's more the delivery in this one than it is the story. The story is sadly not all that unique when a mom goes missing and the husband is suspected of murdering husband/partner. To me, this was presented very well in that it was recreated with Facebook video and social media video and personal iPhone video and
like security cameras. Like some guy across the street from their house had a Ring video on his front door on his doorbell, so he captured like the husband's truck the morning of the disappearance. And
the police headquarters interrogation video and stuff like that. So there's no there are no original interviews in this show. And there's also
recreations. No
recreations and no host or anything like that going, and no voiceover or anything like that. It's all used, it's all source material, which I thought was really fascinating. It was a really way to do it. Directed by Jenny Popplewell in that fashion. And that's what to me really stuck out about this. So that's the basic premise. This thing is like an hour and a half long. It's not very long. It's not 8 episodes or 12 episodes or 15 episodes like some of these docuseries tend to be. It's pretty cut and dried. And that, I don't know if that's a summary as more or less a characterization. But
so mom and 2 kids go missing and
husband
the cops
is suspected.
Yeah, the cops find out what happened. That's your summary right there.
Okay, so you should have done the summary then, I guess. I just went right into like what I thought of the format.
That's okay.
Nobody
is listening anyways. Well, like I said, some chick died. There you go.
Yeah, so I wanted to be a little bit more tactful than that, respectful. So what did you think, Coco?
Well, I'm like you. I really enjoyed the style of it. I enjoyed the no recreations. There were interviews with people, but they were in the moment. It was the police interrogation video. It was the body cam from the cop who originally responded to the missing person call, talking to her friend who called in the fact that she couldn't get a hold. This lady's name is Shanann Watts. Mm-hmm. Her friend had dropped her off the previous, the night before. They had just flown back from like a business conference, and then she went over to the house that morning. Shanann didn't answer the door. She wasn't answering her phone. She wasn't responding to texts. So yeah, I really enjoyed it. I said to Daltz as we were watching this, now that we're in pandemic times, maybe this is the way forward for documentaries, since you can't really have people being in the same room together to do interviews, and Zoom might not look great, and you can't really do recreations. So if we could just do all police body cam footage and interrogation room footage and then news conference footage when the perpetrator is brought to justice, like that's new and it's really interesting. And it never lagged for me. Like the way it was edited together, it jumped back and forth in time, but not in a confusing way. So it started with the missing person report being called in, and then it went back to like 7 weeks before the disappearance, and then 2 days into the, her being missing, and it kind of went back and forth, but they always showed you when they were jumping in time. It didn't just cut suddenly. So I really enjoyed the format. I enjoyed it a lot.
One of the things I've decried lately about Netflix and some of the docuseries that they have is what I call the death of editing. So you have these series like the Madeleine McCann one that we keep going on and on about, or I do it anyway.
Which is why it keeps getting downloaded. So it's one of our most popular episodes at this point. People
would rather listen to the podcast about the series than actually watch the series, which I don't blame them, because the podcast was only 20 minutes long. But one of the things I've decried, like I said, is the death of editing. And there's no need in some cases for these series to be as long as they are, 8, 10, 12 hours. And I think this is the opposite. This is editing at its pinnacle, because you got to imagine they had hours and hours and hours of source material. Like you said, they had the police body cams. We had the interrogation room stuff. We had the security cameras. We had all the footage from the TV stations that were covering it. So there was oodles and oodles of source material here, and they did a great job at weeding through it and paring it down to the essentials. Like you said, it didn't feel draggy at all to me. I mean, it was less than an hour and a half long, so I knew that it was going to be pretty snappy. But at the same time, it didn't drag, but it didn't feel like it was rushed. Like it felt like it had some meat on it, and we were talking about new things, and the story was advancing. I wouldn't say quickly, but it was advancing at a good logical pace throughout the hour and a half or so that it took. So there wasn't any time when I was like, "What? I'm confused here. Go back." Like it was very straightforward. I mean, you called it very early on in terms of who the suspect was and that sort of thing, and you put the pieces together pretty quickly. I wanted to be more optimistic, but in the end, I don't think there's a spoiler here to say that when the partner when a partner disappears, it's usually that partner's partner who is the main suspect.
Yeah, when women and children get hurt, it's generally the person, the adult in their lives. Who tend to do it.
Right.
So,
and guys, we got to be better out there. But there certainly was a lot of great style to this, and a lot of substance. And again, I think that there's nothing really holding me back from giving this like a 2, wanted posters up or something like that.
Wow.
Because this was just a fantastic view, and it was succinct to the point, and it was creative, and it was. It didn't seem like it was going one way or the other. Like it let the story, it was very objective. So it let the story and the footage tell the story, and you made your own conclusions. Like early on, I really wanted to believe in the dad, that he was freaked out about this. But as the story goes through and unravels, you're thinking, yeah, dodgy. And then it starts putting some clues together for you and that sort of thing. So I was very impressed.
I wonder if part of the reason for it only being like 83 minutes long or whatever is because like within, I think, 4 days tops of her disappearance, they figured out what happened. Like they got the confession, they were led to the bodies, So it's not like this was an Elizabeth Smart situation where she's missing for like 9 months or 2 years or whatever, and there's a lot more detail to the investigation and the missing person case. This was just she disappeared, and kind of immediately the cops zeroed in on the husband, and I think 4 days. It was either 3 or 4 days, but 4 days tops after she disappeared, they finally got him to confess. So
yeah, they cracked it. And I remember seeing when the fake, like the graphic of the fake alarm clock flipped from one day, day one to day 2. And I was thinking, don't do it like Madeleine McCann, like we did day 1, day 97, and then day 32, and then day 47. Like it was just, that one was just all over the place to me. Whereas this one, I was like, you don't really need the clock, because I'm getting the sense that it's crawling ahead. Like this is a logical way to work. And I will say that there was a lot of cooperation by the police and by the family of the mom, the deceased mom. There was a lot of cooperation there, and you could tell because there were the friends involved and the families involved and that sort of thing.
I'm sure they probably all had to sign release forms for their footage to be used. Like, even though
yeah.
it was like body cam footage from the cops or whatever, I'm sure the friends had to, for the documentary, sign a form to release.
Yeah,
the
and there
footage
wasn't a
and stuff,
lot from the Watts family side of it. There was a little bit, and it was heartbreaking in the courtroom and that sort of thing. But it's definitely, there's cooperation, and having done some research before this podcast, there was a lot of cooperation by the family. So there's a certain, well, is that really objective and is that journalistic? But I think in this case, it came across as being pretty even-handed because you felt a little bit for the dad, but then you didn't.
Well, so apparently this was actually a very famous case when it actually happened. Like, it made like Good Morning America.
Yeah.
I'm sure it was probably written up in People, because People magazine loves stories like this.
Yeah.
I don't believe I've ever heard of this case. I mean, it's a possibility that I was sitting in a doctor's office and I picked up a copy of People and I read about it, but I don't remember hearing about this. And I tend not to pay attention to cases like this because the media loves it when white women go missing, and that's not a national news story. Like, focus on other stuff. So
Right.
I really tend not to pay attention, even though I hope it turns out for the best. But one of the things I do wish was, like, even though you know the husband did it, more than likely, because that's usually the case.
Statistically,
like, I still just, he was kind of such an enigma to me. And, you know, I mean, obviously, like we've said, they didn't do any direct interviews, so they didn't interview him in prison. But it was like, okay, yeah, he's like screwing around with somebody else and he's getting in shape, and he and his wife are having problems, and like, okay, he probably wanted to be rid of his old life so he could start a new life, but he just didn't seem like he had that personality. And I know that everybody can have that person, like everybody can snap and do something that they don't think that they would ever be capable of. But he just seemed like he was such a just placid, like even keel guy. Like, I mean, when she went missing, obviously he put in the performance of pretending like he was upset and, you know, worried and blah, blah, blah. But everything, like, this lady had like a ton of Facebook Live videos and stuff, and he never seemed like he was too emotional one way or the other. And suddenly he kills his wife and his 2 kids, and it was just such an enigma. I'm like, that just, how?
Yeah.
How did he get to that point? Like, obviously the problems in the marriage had been building up and things exploded, but I don't know. It just,
it seemed that was the missing link to me as well, was how did he go from being a happy dad, because it seemed like he loved his daughters and it seemed like he was playing with them, and he seemed, you know, as a guy who has raised daughters, and you tend to, there are 2 types of parents, right? There are the ones that are just, they want to have kids because they're, you know, it's what the expected thing to do at a certain time of their lives, or it's a status thing, or there's the parents that genuinely want to have kids and love having kids, and we're parented very well and therefore have good role models. And he seemed to me like he was very interested in having kids. He seemed like he was, you know, having fun. And of course, it's the danger of social media is you only see all these happy moments, right? So, but the happy moments seemed like it was genuine. You know, the girls were running to him when he came home, or when he came on an airplane and that sort of thing, came home from the airport, and they seemed genuinely interested in seeing him and affectionate toward him. Like, kids are the biggest, you know, BS meters going. Kids and dogs, right? Like, you know, little kids and dogs. If something's wrong with somebody, then you're going to notice it around that, around kids and dogs. So I was baffled by the change. There wasn't really a good explanation to me. It was like, well, yeah, he's got a hottie on the side, but I mean, he didn't seem like he was murderous in any way, shape, or form. Like, what makes a guy snap like that? That was, you're right about that. Is that didn't necessarily take me out of the documentary. It just was kind of, well, wait a minute, why did he do this? It's sort of like what we were talking about with the Jeffrey Epstein thing, and we didn't really, when we were reviewing that docuseries on Netflix, and we didn't really get a lot of insight into his character as to what his upbringing was and why he was the way he was. And I think that's what's missing here. And maybe that's intentional. It's like, this is the everyman next door neighbor. Right. And all of a sudden he's doing this horrible thing. And we just don't know what makes people, snap like that.
Right. I mean, obviously they were having problems, but it's not like they were having problems and they were screaming at each other every day and slamming doors, and somebody was going and sleeping on the couch of the neighbor across the street or whatever. It was, she would try to pick a fight and he would just walk away. Or she would call him and say, hey, let's talk. And he'd be like, oh, I'm working out. I'll call you later. Like he seemed like he was really avoidant and not confrontational. If
anything,
not confrontational at all. And then suddenly, oh, I killed my wife and my 2 kids. And I put their bodies in like an oil drum or whatever.
Yeah,
I mean, I was like, what? Like, where did that come from?
She was a hard case, so I can imagine that she was not backing down and in any way, shape, or form. And again, I'm not legitimizing or rationalizing or anything like that, but the snap factor there would make some sense. Like you just lose your cool and something happens that you're not in control of. But the kids, that was premeditated, and that was something that was heartbreaking and absolutely crushing, that somebody who loved their kid so much would do that kind of thing. So it's just, there's more needed there, but I think we have a lot of insight to maybe make our own conclusions. Like he started getting in really good shape and he was doing this and he was doing that.
He looked really good. I mean, holy
he did
cow.
Look really good. It was funny too, because like we were watching the video of their wedding, I think it was, near the beginning of this documentary, and then we'd go to him reporting her missing and that sort of thing. Is like, is that the same guy?
Right, totally.
Like he looks, I must have just missed, it must have been a bad image on the wedding video or something like that, but he looked like he dropped about 50 pounds or something like that, and he was in good shape.
He got shredded, like Jesus.
Yeah, it wasn't like in a sick losing weight kind of way. He was stoked. So, so that, like maybe there's something there that we don't know about, if it's, I don't know, roid rage or something like that, but there was not that light shone on his character in that way. But really, to me, that was part of the mystery too. That's part of the relatability of this, is like, not necessarily in terms of me as a parent, but me as a neighbor, is you just really don't know these people that you live next to or that are your friends or colleagues and that sort of thing.
Yeah. I mean, and nobody knows what happens in a relationship except for the 2 people in it. So
right, exactly.
Yeah, and especially when somebody's going on Facebook Live all the time and posting all these videos and pictures of
very public.
Oh, the perfect family, and then behind the scenes she's texting her girlfriends like, he knows when I take a shower at night, this means I want sex, but instead he went and he worked out, and I'm crying. And I'm like, why don't you talk to him about that instead of texting your girlfriends? Like,
but at least she has somebody to talk to about it.
Yeah, that's true.
At least she's not in it alone.
Right. Like, go to, find a therapist. Like,
right.
When you're having problems, don't just... Everybody complains about their significant other to other people, but when you do it a whole lot, that's... Wait a minute. That's not
everybody
good.
does that?
Everybody does that.
Do you do that?
Not a lot.
All right, I'll take that.
I mean, it's one thing if you're like, oh, he forgot to buy the milk. What am I going to do for my coffee now? And it's another when you're like, I'm crying because he...
Well, hopefully you're not sitting in the car going, oh, that oat milk. I really needed that oat milk.
I know.
What's the matter with him? Why doesn't he just write it down?
Sauvignon Blanc, not Cabernet Sauvignon. How many times do I have to tell him?
It took me a good 6 months, listener. But I eventually made notes in my phone, which I have to update because I think there's some vanilla latte or something like that in there now that was a legacy favorite of yours before you went off sugar and everything, before you stopped having fun.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I'm 44 now, so
right.
There you go.
Right. You got to stop having fun at some point, I guess.
Yeah, totally. So it's one thing to complain about something minor. Everybody does that, but it's another thing to, just tell everybody everything about everything, but then also at the same time on social media, you're like, we're the perfect family, and having the gender reveal and stuff. Like, to me, that was the entire episode, or the entire issue of this series, or this show, I should say, this documentary, was the indictment of social media and how people live their lives so shiny and new and everything's great and happy. But behind the scenes, it's just not that at all. And all the videos we saw, him embracing his kids and playing with them, and her being all smiley. But she did say a couple of things like, oh, my husband's a genius. He left the phone in the car. Like, right, totally. Like she was, but again, that sort of was her personality, not to, like the poor guy comes in, he's dressed as Santa. He's trying to... That was really funny.
And then he just, he's trying to surprise the girls. The girls are terrified, of course, because why wouldn't you be?
3 years old, and this strange man is coming in the house.
Strange man with a beard, and you can't see his face. And Yeah, it's pitch black at night, and Santa comes to the door, and he's like, "Ho ho ho!" Like,
Yeah.
and then he just sits on the chair, dejected, waiting for the kids to come down.
And I didn't get, like, apparently he was supposed to bring the camera so he could film them running toward him. But I'm like, wouldn't that make them even more scared if Santa's got a camera?
Santa's got a camera.
Like, I didn't really understand that part, but I felt really bad for him because he was just like, okay, I'll just sit here.
Yeah, I'll just sit here with my ho ho ho. And he's got the fake sack of toys in his hand, and he's got the bad beard, and he's got the Santa suit with the sleeves are riding up his his arms.
Apparently that was a thing that happened when in real time when this actually happened. And I would like to remind you that in 2018, other things were going on in the world.
Right.
Besides one lady and her children going missing, which is a tragedy, but not, tax cuts for the rich and Obamacare being repealed and midterm elections and caravans of immigrants coming up from Central America. This is all the other stuff that was going on in 2018. But apparently Good Morning America was covering this. But I just forgot what I was going to say.
You were going to say that you don't want me to come to the door dressed as Santa, but if I did, then you would not yell at me for forgetting the camera in the car.
That's true. Well, you'd be like sitting on the couch eating the cookies that we left out for you. So
I do that anyway.
Yeah.
Like Santa's got the sweetest gig.
Oh, I remembered. Okay, so apparently when this was actually happening, people were going to her Facebook page and watching all her videos, and they were commenting about like, well, she's horrible, like she deserved it.
Yeah,
and I'm
right.
like, just stop.
Right.
Nobody deserved it. Like,
Yeah.
we can have an opinion on, maybe you shouldn't post so much stuff to social media, but it doesn't matter. Like, nobody deserves to die. Like,
No.
nobody should kill their spouse or their children. I mean, I think this is like a baseline for society.
Well,
like, regardless of what your relationship is like, just get a divorce.
Before it'd be like, you don't need to say that, but actually you do need to say that now. With
Right.
social media the way it is, you actually have to go and say, no, somebody doesn't deserve to get coronavirus, no matter who they are and how nasty they are. They don't deserve that. And it's the humanity. Like, where is the humanity in all this sort of stuff? That's the thing that's frustrating. And when I saw that too, I was like, she was a hard case. Like, that's what I said that earlier, is that she seemed like she was a difficult woman or a strong woman or whatever, however you want to phrase it. But yeah, nobody deserves that kind. Nobody deserves to be mistreated, let alone killed,
Right.
just because of who they are. Mm-hmm. I mean, as long as you're not hurting other people,
Right.
then back off.
Just, like I said, just get a divorce.
Right.
That divorce is hell, which I don't know personally because I haven't gone through it, but you know it.
Oh, it's great. I would do it again. You want to get married and then get divorced? Because it was
10
awesome.
out of 10 would get divorced again.
Would recommend.
Right.
It's a great way to spend your money.
Can confirm divorce is awesome.
We're all about the contrary here on the podcast, listener, and you couldn't get much more contrary than divorce is awesome.
So everybody knows divorce is awesome, but it beats sitting in a maximum security prison cell every day for the rest of your life because you killed your wife and children.
These are the things you don't think you would ever say.
Right.
Or you would ever have to say. Right. But, don't kill somebody because they're nasty. Don't kill somebody and instead of getting a divorce, thinking you're going to get away with it and you're going to run off with your little hottie who seemed like she wasn't even really all that into him that much.
Yeah, that was weird too. Like when they had the interrogation room footage of her, she was on her phone while she's talking
Yeah.
to the cop. Like she's got her phone in her hand, and I'm like, is she looking at Facebook?
No,
what's she doing?
See, the irony of ironies would have been updating her status in the interrogation rooms, single, right. And also I'm checking in at the
not in a relationship.
Yeah, in the Frederick Police Department,
right?
Feeling anxious,
Totally.
with a little anxious face,
Yeah.
while being interrogated.
I always feel bad for all these women who are the side pieces for the guys who kill their wives, because it's now your name is with his forever. Anytime you Google what's that guy's name, Chad Watts or Chris Watts or whatever,
Chris Watts,
this lady's name is going to come up. It's
I
that poor lady.
I have no sympathy whatsoever for those women if they knew what was going on.
Well, if they knew what was going on, yeah,
if
right.
they knew
but
he was married, then she did know he was married.
Yeah, but he pulled the line on her that every married guy pulls on every woman. That
I'm leaving her.
Yeah, we're getting a separation, and then apparently she found out later that Shanann was pregnant,
right.
and she had no idea, and Yeah. So
I think we're all adults here. You have your eyes open. I think that promises get made in those situations. Like, I'm not defending him by any stretch of the imagination, but I don't feel bad for women who are involved in these kinds of situations, homewreckers that they can be.
Well, when you don't know, like the guy is clearly not getting a separation,
Right?
Like,
But she bought into I'm leaving my wife. Like,
yeah.
that never happens, hardly ever.
Well, yeah, but
I'm not,
sometimes you meet Mr. Wonderful and you want to believe,
Right, but whose fault is that?
Well,
That's
he's the one.
That's the woman's fault for believing.
He's the one who took the vows, though. So ultimately, it's his fault.
Before he met her.
Yeah.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. He's the one who's cheating on his wife. Like,
Absolutely.
He's the one who's lying and running around behind his wife's back.
I'm not defending that behavior at all. But it's just, like I said, I don't feel bad for the women who know what's going on in these situations. The ones that don't, they're blissfully unaware. Well, then they shouldn't be blamed. But yeah.
So you'd give this 2 wanted posters up?
I would. What would your ranking be? Your rating?
Yeah, I think I'd give it like a solid A-.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So where would you rank this among the documentaries that we've seen, the many that we have seen?
Oh, wow. Well, the only one I can think of right off, let's see, there's The Challenger, the Madeleine McCann one, but those were series. They weren't movies. So
I don't think we've seen one that was this short and this compelling.
Yeah, totally. So compared to Madeleine McCann, definitely it's head and shoulders above.
Right.
Because that was just way too long.
Yeah.
Challenger, I think, could have gone into more detail. I said that on that podcast. So I'd put it above Challenger, too. But
and the Social Dilemma that we just recently reviewed.
That was fine.
Yeah.
I liked this better than that one, too.
Yeah.
But that one was also pretty short. So
Right. That was only 4 episodes, I think, wasn't it?
No, I think that was a movie. Wasn't that a movie?
Aren't they all 4 episodes?
True.
4 to 8. I don't know. That's just the default.
Yeah.
So the director is telling us to wrap it up. So you want to take us out, Coco, with where people can find us?
You can find us on Apple Podcasts. Please rate and review us there so that others can find us as well. We are also on Pandora, Spotify, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Google Play, TuneIn, YouTube, IMDb, Ghana, if you're in India, and Amazon Music. Please find us there. We're very excited to be on Amazon Music now.
Yes.
If you would like to drop us a line, let us know what you want us to review in the future, what you think of this podcast, you can email us at cocoanddalts@gmail.com. You can also find us on Facebook and Twitter at cocoanddalts. And on the interwebs for our reviews of things that we don't review on the podcast, we are cocoanddalts.com.
And by the way, listener, thank you for making July our best July ever. And then August was our best August ever. And then September was our best September ever. And also those consecutive months, we set records each time for downloads. So we have big plans for October because we got to top July, August, and September.
And thank you, listeners in India. We are now big in India thanks to Ghana.
We are.
If you or someone you know is on the subcontinent, please tell them about Ghana and us.
Because we love you, listener.
We do.
We are speaking directly to you. And so like us and thank us and share us.
And for another episode, I'm not Daltz.
And I'm not Coco.